Yes, we have seen the development of the brain. Once the brain being developed, it forms the different kind of the lobes. So first one, this lobe is called the frontal lobe. You can remember it's the front side. It is called the frontal lobe. Then this sides near here is we are having our ear, right? So above the ear it's called the temporal lobe. Then this area between the parietal lobe, between the parietal and the frontal lobe, there is a somatomotor cortex is present and the somatosensory cortex. So once the information coming from the spinal cord to the sensory area, the motor will be descending down. The track we have seen in the beginning of the class. Yes, and below the parietal lobe, there is a lobe is called the occipital lobe. This is a cerebellum. Cerebellum is otherwise called the mini brain. Mini brain. It's mainly for the coordination. And whatever the information is passing, one copy of the information is going to the cerebellum also. And main thing is also main important one, proprioception. What is proprioception? Even in the you are sleeping, you know very well where is your body parts, where you are there, everything information being stored in your body, where is your nose. So you can close your eyes, you can even touch your nose. Why? Because already the information is stored. Even you are not sensually seeing where is your noses, but this why it's called the mini brain. So in between, like midbrain is there and pons medulla oblongata, pons medulla, this also is there. Then so it's a frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, then temporal lobe. Okay, then will be the pons and the medulla oblongata. So the pons is otherwise called the bridging between the bridge between the midbrain and the medulla oblongata. So the brain stem which is consists of midbrain, pons and the medulla oblongata. So in the brain there are various areas are there. So this is totally it's called cerebrum. 80% of our brain is really made up of cerebrum. In that particular areas are important for the particular function. In a frontal area, this is for concentration, planning, thinking, problem solving is mainly by the frontal lobe. Then in here, the second area is called the Broca's area. Broca's area, otherwise it is called the area for the speech. Okay. Then this third one in this front between this temporal and this area, this is the area for smell. Okay. Then in the temporal lobe, there is this area, mainly it is called the area for hearing. So everything ear is working and cochlea is functioning, action potential are coming, but when the problem something happened to this one, your hearing will be affected. When the area of the brain is affected, you cannot able to hear it, though you have good function of middle ear, collecting information, even cochlea, everything is functioning. So brain, these areas of the brain is very important to fulfill our functions. Then this area is called the facial recognition. Then in the occipital lobe, this area is called the occipital area for vision. And this one, some people are very active this area. They will learn and the reading and languages, they will learn very easily. So this area of the brain is very active. They are very intelligent. They learn the languages very fast. Okay. And then cerebellum. It is the area, cerebellum mainly for the coordination. Otherwise it is called the mini brain. So the brain is forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain. So forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. This hindbrain is very important. This hindbrain functions are heartbeat, circulation and digestion. You know hindbrain is made up of rhombencephalon, correct? We have seen in the development of the brain. Also brainstem composed of medulla oblongata, pons, cerebellum. So the hindbrain coordination function also it is doing, but respiration, circulation, all these things mainly they are doing. The midbrain is made up of by the mesencephalon. Mesencephalon, which is located between the brainstem. Look at the brains. Midbrain is located between the brainstem and the like medulla oblongata and the bones. This one in between it is. And cerebrum is the very largest portion of the brain. 80% of the brain is made up of cerebrum. It has got various lobes, as we have seen: language, hearing, memory, visual, and all these lobes on this one. This cerebral hemisphere, we have two cerebral hemisphere, that we have two hemispheres are connected right to left, as we already I told you. It is called the corpus callosum, right or not? So this is about the different lobes of the brains which is forming. Cells we have seen prosencephalon, forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. And there are the various cells which is forming, and various lobes are present. So in that various lobes there are various areas of the hearing are present in the brain. So the hindbrain consists of medulla oblongata, bones, and the cerebellum, all called the hindbrain. So the hindbrain is very important, mainly for the survival, respiration, rhythm, motor activity, sleep, wakefulness, all these things very important. So pons, cerebellum, and the medulla oblongata, it's for the hindbrain. This brain, if you cut, it is cut section of the brain. You can see the lobes, everything. I told you these two hemispheres are connected by the corpus callosum, right there. In the corpus callosum, these cavities are present. This is called the lateral ventricles. This small portion is called the thalamus. Okay. The thalamus is the upper portion of the just upper side of the cerebellum. Okay, it is called the thalamus. So the thalamus, the small body which is projecting, it is called very incredibly very important. It is called the hypothalamus. Very little structure. This is the hypothalamus. It weighing about the only 4 gram, nearly your nail. How much weight? Only 4 gram weighing around, but it is very important. Maintaining the hemostasis, temperature regulating center means immediately you will say hypothalamus. Osmolarity. In the hypothalamus, there is one gland which is hanging downwards. It's called the pituitary gland. This pituitary gland have the two parts, that is the anterior part and the posterior part. This pituitary gland is a master gland, mainly secreting most of the hormones. Basically these hormones, all the hormone mostly secretion will be taken place by these pituitary glands. Hypothalamus also will be control all the mood, everything according to that hypothalamus will be controlling. So it is a very important structure. So it's a cut section of the brain. I told you two hemisphere. You are visualizing only one hemisphere, okay, because we are dividing the brain into I told you both the hemispheres are connected by the big commissional fiber as a corpus callosum. Below that is a thalamus. In the thalamus, small structure which is present is called the hypothalamus. In the hypothalamus, small body which is situated in a hypothalamus, nearly only 4 gram in a weight. Very small gland. It is a master gland, mainly temperature regulations, everything doing. Its functions will be altered by according to your mood. So mood, everything it will be altered. Then the small gland which is present below the hypothalamus is called the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland has two parts. What is the parts? Like anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. And each pituitaries are secreting some of the important hormone which regulates the body functions, everything, many things. So we will see in the endocrinology, we will see learn in detail. Next, if you see, this is the ventricles of the brain. So what is this ventricles? Ventricles is nothing but the cavities of the brain. Why these cavities are present here? Why it is important? And in the cavity, what is present? What is the name of it? And what is the name of those fluid, and where this fluid is being secreted from these cavities, where it is being secreted, where it is being absorbed, and what is the important? If there is any block or something happened to that, what is the anatomical important? We can see. So cavities, ventricle is nothing but the cavities of the brain. So the cavities means the ventricles is composed of two lateral ventricles and one third ventricle. Narrow part is called the third ventricle and one more is called the fourth ventricles. So what is the main functions of these ventricles? The ventricles mainly functions in the upper portion of the ventricle. There are choroid. These choroid epitheliums are really secreting one fluid substances, or the fluid is called the cerebrospinal fluid. So cerebrospinal fluid is being secreted from here. So what is the functions, main functions of these ventricle and cerebrospinal fluid? Mainly this fluid helps to keeps the brain, it act like a cushion, like this one. This third ventricle, third ventricle is little bit narrow structure, and we have two lateral ventricles are there, and one narrow structure is called the third ventricle and will be the fourth ventricle. The fourth ventricle, if you see, the third ventricle is a narrow, it's like a funnel like a structure is present, and in the fourth ventricle it is like a diamond like a structure. This where the cerebrospinal fluid will be runs along with the side of the brainstem. Then during the hydrocephalus, any obstruction or something happened, during the abnormal enlargement of this brain cavities will happen. This abnormal enlargement of brain cavity is called the hydrocephalus. So CSF fluid runs through the lateral ventricles and flows through the through the left and right of the foramen, and it is reaching to the third it's reaching to the fourth third ventricle and reaching to the fourth ventricle. So we have seen this this CSF fluid is being secreted in the choroid plexus of epithelium, and it is circulates throughout these ventricles. So these fluids are always segregating. Somewhere it has to be get absorbed, or so the CSF fluid it circulate through the fourth ventricle coming to the third ventricle and fourth ventricle. Any obstruction not there, it will be overflowing, and it is entering into the subarachnoid space, and it is being absorbed by the arachnoid villi. So this is about the ventricles of the brain. So any structure you can draw, even the cut section you can draw, or this is another section we have drawn, but you can see the ventricles of the brain. One thing you have to remember, that where the fluid is being developed from the brain, what is called ventricle, it's called the cavity, and how many ventricles are present. There's a two lateral ventricle and one third ventricle and the fourth ventricle, and this lateral ventricle are this wider, where it is being choroid plexus are secreting, and the choroid epithelium plexus, and then this epithelium, then once the fluid is secreting, it is circulating, act like a cushion, and if any blockage or anything is there, blockage should not be there. If it is there, what will happen to the blockage will be affecting, you can hydrocephalus will be coming, the big this one. In that condition they will do some anatomical procedure, and will be tubing will be put it, and to the heart they will be drain into it, that is they will do. and this fluid will be entering into the space, arachnoid space. We have seen in last class where is subarachnoid space is there. In the arachnoid villi will be absorbing. So absorption. So it is a secretion and absorption. So brain itself, it is secreting the fluid by corpuscles absorbed by the arachnoid villi. Understand? So you have to know, in this class you have to know what are all the lobes of the brain and what are all the areas of the brain and what is the cut section of the brain. And we have in overall brain, it has two hemispheres, and two hemispheres are right and left. It is connected by the corpus callosum. In front and back it will be connected by the association fibers, right or not? Because brain means there's a multiple neurons are connecting. It's like a cable system. These cables are connected by the multiple neuron and connecting, isn't it? Connecting down and track. It is forming a track, ascending and descending track. So sensory informations are coming and sensory input coming and the motor information going to the downwards. So all these cells, various cells are make up of, as we have seen, like forebrain made up of the prosencephalon, hindbrain, midbrain, mesencephalon, hindbrain, romphencephalon. These cells are generated from like neural tube, it's forming all these things we have seen. This is about the lobes of the brain, and these all have to remember about the areas of the brain and the cut section. The biggest one is corpus callosum, and this is cerebellum, and above the cerebellum is the thalamus is present, and thalamus little bit down, small structure you could see, only 4 gram in the weight. It is called the hypothalamus, and the small projection is present is the gland which is present, so pituitary gland. It has got two parts, anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. Each pituitary are secreting different gland which is totally controlling. Hypothalamus is temperature regulating system. Temperature regulation will be hindbrain mainly for the, that hindbrain you have to remember about heart, circulation, digestion also. This one, okay. So you can very well draw and practice those pictures. If it is coming as a 15-mark question, simply they ask about brain, or they tell you can write about introduction and lobes about of the brain and the ventricles of the brain. Okay, hope you understand. And the next class we will see about the circulatory system of the brain, circle of Willis or the circulatory system of the brain. Hope you might have understand my introduction of the brain, the development of the brain, after developing coverings of the brain, and we are seeing about the lobes of the brain. While studying the structure itself, while in the functions, you can remember by keeping areas. What are the functions you can remember very well. So no need to mug it up. Always you draw. The picture is more important. Your own words you can try to write. We are not studying up to the level of a doctor. At least the nursing student should know what is the structure, where is the function, where the CSF fluid is being secreted, what is the functions of CSF fluid, what is the composition of CSF fluid, and where it is being secreted, where it is circulated in the ventricle, where it is being absorbed, and what is the anatomical importance of the CSF fluid. That's all applied anatomy. So you don't separate anatomy and physiology. We are periphery level, we are learning. Just learn what is the parts and areas and what are the main functions. This much you are learning, you can get more than 80 marks in the anatomy.